The sky was ablaze with molten gold and rose as the luxury yacht Sea Star glided effortlessly through the calm waters off the Cornish coast. Captain Isla Marcus stood at the polished teak wheel, her eyes fixed on the horizon, while the yacht's wake shimmered like liquid diamonds in the dying light. To starboard, First Mate Sam O'Neill secured the mainsail's reef lines, his fingers deftly knotting each line even as a gentle breeze ruffled his hair. Below the flybridge, marine ecologist Dr. Lila Chen strolled the deck with her scarlet macaw, Captain Jack, perched on her outstretched arm. Jack's vibrant plumage, scarlet body, cobalt blue tail, and emerald wingtips lit up the deck under lantern light. Lila smiled as Jack preened, nibbling thoughtfully at the frayed edge of his perch strap. The guests, an elegant journalist couple, a retired sea captain turned novelist, and two tech entrepreneurs, murmured in anticipation of the evening's moonlit dinner on the aft deck. At 1830 hours, the yacht's instruments recorded a steady 3-knot wind from the southwest and glass-flat seas. The navigation console glowed with routine checks, engine temperature stable at 68 degrees Celsius, fuel reserves at 80%, and GPS plotting a leisurely course around the seamount at a safe distance of 2 nautical miles. Lila consulted her tablet, noting rising barometric pressure, a sign of fair weather. None of them suspected that, just beyond the seamount's ridge, a sudden squall was gathering strength, its first thunderheads appearing as dark smudges on the western horizon. As the sun slipped behind cloud-streaked skies, a single thunderclap rolled so faintly that guests paused mid-sip, casting curious glances at one another. Jack cocked his head, feathers quivering, and let out a low "murk," his only warning before the first wisps of a gathering gale curled around the yacht's bow. The moment hung in the golden air, hinting that this tranquil voyage was poised on the brink of a rapid and dangerous change, one that only a keen-eyed Parrot would sense in time. By 1845 hours, the fair weather clouds had transformed into a roiling wall of slate-gray thunderheads. The wind gauge flickered from 3 knots to 22 knots as gusts funneled around the Atalanta seamount. Captain Marcus felt the yacht heel under the sudden gust and called over her shoulder, "Reef the mainsail, now!" On deck, Sam O'Neill sprang into action. He eased the mainsheet, snapped the first reef point, and secured the sail's tack to the boom. The boom creaked as it shifted, and lines whipped like serpents in the stiffening breeze. Above them on the flybridge, the yacht's anemometer jolted to 28 knots, and radar screens aboard Sea Star flickered with the approaching squall line, its lead echo a jagged red smear closing fast. Meanwhile, below decks, the engine room's steady drone was punctuated by an alarming clatter. Dr. Lila Chen, returning from stowing dinner dishes, heard the metallic ping of loose rivets and hurried forward. Water sluiced across the engine room floor, the result of a compromised seawater strainer. Seawater surged into the bilge at 150 liters per minute, flooding the starboard generator's cooling manifold and triggering an automatic shutdown. Alarms blared, generator failure, starboard, bilge high, engines over speed. Up on deck, the seas had risen to 1.5 meters, with confused swells. Sam's boots slapped against the deck as he raced to the port engine controls. Captain Jack, perched near the companionway, sensed the chaos in every bone. His feathers ruffled violently, his tail lashed the air. Then, with remarkable clarity above the growing howl of wind, Jack launched into a piercing squawk. "Caw, caw, caw!" Each cry shrill and insistent. The guests froze, hearts skipping. The Parrot angled toward the stern, wings spread wide, and shouted again, "Caw, caw, caw!" as the yacht rolled in a rogue wave that washed across the aft deck. Captain Marcus, her face set in determination, barked, "Deckhands, man the port engine! Lila, clear that bilge strainer now!" But even as orders flew, Jack's alarm call echoed across the surging deck, a clarion warning that augmented every human sense. Something in this storm was far more than a gale. Deckhands clung to railings as Sea Star pitched and rolled in the roiling swells. Below, bilge alarms blared and water gushed from the engine room vent lines. On the aft deck, Dr. Lila Chen braced next to the companionway, her parrot Captain Jack clinging to her shoulder. Jack's feathers were slick with spray. His bright eyes flicked to every overturned deck chair and snapping line. Then, above the wind's roar, Jack's cry ripped through the chaos. Caw, caw, caw! Each syllable as sharp as a hail of gravel. Lila froze, realizing this was no mimicry, but a genuine alarm. Jack hopped from her shoulder to the radar binnacle, claws skidding on the wet surface, and let out a second volley, caw, 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 as if pointing to the invisible danger below. Captain Marcus whipped her head toward Jack's frantic display. "What is it, Jack?" she shouted. But Jack's relentless squawks drowned out her words. He flew over to the stern rail, ruffled his wings, and squawked again. This time 3 rapid bursts, then 2 long, lingering calls. Caw, 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 caw. First Mate O'Neill, goggles steamed by spray, peered over the rail. Parrots never squawked like that. He scanned the dark water churning beneath. Something's out there. At that moment, the yacht lurched violently. A rogue wave struck the stern, sending a shuddering shudder through the hull. O'Neill stumbled but caught himself, adrenaline surging. Captain Marcus seized the moment. Abandon engines, manual pumps only, get everyone into life rafts. She keyed her mic. Mayday! Mayday! Sea Star capsizing off Cornwall. All hands abandon ship. The crew leapt into action. Lines were cut, rafts inflated, and PFDs clipped around each passenger. Throughout it all, Jack's squawk echoed, caw, 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 a rhythmic alarm that drove each hurried step. As the guests stumbled into the bobbing life raft, Jack swooped overhead, circling to keep their spirits. In the midst of swirling whitecaps and flapping orange canopies, his alarm call had become their rallying cry, an avian beacon guiding them through the storm's fury toward the next stage of their survival. Captain Marcus's voice cut through the storm like a command cannon. Abandon ship! All hands to the life rafts! Now! The yacht lurched again as a towering wave smashed across the aft deck, sweeping loose equipment into the churning sea. Sam O'Neill overturned the starboard life raft locker, yanking it open against the wind. Inflatable rafts burst free, hissing as their cylinders filled with compressed CO2. He wrestled free a stowed painter line and clipped its carabiner to the yacht's cleat, fighting the high swell to prevent the raft from drifting away. Below deck, Dr. Chen and 2 guests, shivering and wide-eyed, emerged onto the deck, PFDs already inflated by automatic spray-triggered CO2 cartridges. Jack, the scarlet macaw, circled overhead, his crimson wings a stark flash against the slate sky as he squawked his urgent alarm. Caw, caw, caw! One by one, passengers slid down the painter lines into the bobbing raft. The retired sea captain, arms trembling, grasped the raft's edge and lowered himself into the inflatable's cavernous hull. Lila handed him off gently. The tech entrepreneurs followed, their evening attire drenched and faces resolute. Sam secured the last straps as the raft met the swell's trough, the yacht's rail glinting above like a lifeline. On deck, Captain Marcus stayed behind to oversee the final demons, manual pumps and flares. She fired a red parachute flare into the sky, its burning arc briefly illuminating Sea Star's battered silhouette. Jack swooped low, skimming the slippery deck rail, as if ensuring no one was left behind. Then, with a final triumphant caw, 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 Jack flew toward the raft's canopy, landing nimbly on its deflated skirt just as Sam cut the painter line. The raft surged away, a tiny orange speck on the storm-tossed horizon. Captain Marcus watched until the swell consumed the view, then turned back to the yacht's rail. With her crew gone and the yacht's list increasing, she triggered her own PFD, stepped to the rail's edge, and leapt into the frothing sea, thrusting upward to meet the raft she had so recently guided. Amid the chaos of roiling waves and wind-torn warnings, it was Captain Jack's relentless squawk that had driven each life raft launch, each flare fired, each hand reached out. His cry had become the heartbeat of their escape, a small but mighty alarm that transformed panic into purpose and guided every soul away from a doomed deck into the tenuous safety of survival. As Sea Star disappeared beneath the roiling waves, the survivors' orange life raft bobbed helplessly in 3-meter swells. Captain Jack perched on the canopy's frame, feathers drenched but eyes keenly scanning the horizon. His persistent caw, caw, caw pierced the storm's roar, each staccato cry carrying across the dark water. Back at the Lizard Point Coast Guard Station, SAR Petty Officer Aidan Reed and radar technician Hannah Mills huddled over their console. Amid weather alerts and distress chatter, Hannah's headphones crackled with an incongruous bird call, sharp, urgent, repeating every 5 seconds. "Did you hear that?" she shouted over the intercom. Reed paused his chart plotting. "A parrot?" Hannah snapped switches on the station's microphone array, isolating the call's bearing. The squawk arrived most strongly at 240 degrees true, offshore, and its strength varied with each burst, indicating the bird's movement atop the raft. Reed keyed the mic. "All stations, monitor odd high-pitched alarm at 240 degrees. Coast Guard launch in 5." Within minutes, the SAR RHIB, an 11-meter rigid-hull inflatable craft, skidded down the slipway into the furious sea. Reed, helmet strapped tight, positioned the boat's parabolic microphone toward the squawk's bearing. As they punched through the swells, Hannah called out, "Signals strongest at bearing 237 degrees. Move 3 degrees port." Reed corrected the helm, and the squawk's volume jumped. On deck, the RHIB crew peered into the rain-laced night. The squawk's echoing pattern, 3 short bursts, a pause, 1 long cry, guided their approach through broken seas. Radar showed only moving clutter, but the bird's alarm carried across the water, a living beacon in the storm. At 2032 hours, the RHIB's spotlight swept across a distant orange glow. The life raft tossed like a cork. As Reed cut engines, the boat drifted alongside the raft. Captain Marcus, wrapped in a life jacket, and her guests clung to the raft's canopy. Sam O'Neill slipped a rescue sling under each survivor, lifting them aboard one by one. Throughout the operation, Captain Jack squawked triumphantly from the raft's bow, his crimson plumage blazing in the spotlight. With all 7 survivors secured, the RHIB turned back toward Lizard Point. Jack's final caw, caw, caw echoed across the deck as passengers embraced, tears mingling with spray. In the heart of the storm, it had been a parrot's fearless alarm, relayed and acted upon by vigilant coast guards, that had cut through the chaos and led rescuers to a capsized yacht's castaways, turning peril into deliverance. By 2035 hours, the Lizard Point SAR RHIB, an 11-meter rigid hull inflatable, crested the apex of a 3-meter swell. Petty Officer Aidan Reed skillfully throttled back the twin 300-horsepower outboards as the boat plunged into the trough. Radar screens showed only rain-blasted clutter, but the Parrot's squawk remained vivid in Hannah Mills's headset. 3 short bursts at 0.8 seconds intervals, a 1.2-second pause, then a final long cry, each echo growing louder as they closed in. Deckhands donned safety harnesses and clipped to gravity-compensating jacklines. Reed held the RHIB's bow into the wind-tossed swells at a precise 30-degree angle, minimizing roll while maximizing forward thrust. "Hold steady," he bellowed over the roar of wind and waves. Hannah barked, "Signal at 8 o'clock, 15 degrees to port." Reed adjusted the helm by 12 degrees, and the squawk crackled through the sea spray like a lighthouse beacon. At 23:38 hours, the searchlight beam pierced churning darkness to reveal a bright orange life raft, its canopy slashed by tidal surges, bobbing astern of an overturned yacht hull. Captain Jack's crimson form perched atop the raft's bow, squawking triumphantly. Reed cut engines and drifted close, while crewman Petty Officer Diaz prepared the rescue sling, a 2-meter loop of tubular webbing attached to a soft shackle hook. "First, hold on tight," Reed shouted. The RHIB lurched alongside. Diaz leaned over the railing, looping the sling under the raft's lifting points. Sam O'Neill reached down from the raft, grasping the webbing and signaling approval. With a synchronized heave, the sling tightened beneath the raft's keel, securing it to the RHIB's stern tow cleat. Next came the survivors. The retired captain, teeth chattering, was first to be winched aboard. Diaz pulled him up by the life jacket's grab strap as Reed maintained boat position in the heaving sea. One by one, Dr. Chen, the tech entrepreneurs, First Mate O'Neill, and finally Captain Marcus herself, were guided into the RHIB's cockpit compartment. Each survivor's face was streaked with salt and relief. Through it all, Jack never ceased his squawks. Caw, 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 as if calling out each soul by name. With all 7 aboard, Reed clipped the tow line from the raft and throttled into the wind, guiding the RHIB back toward the welcoming lights of Lizard Point Station. At 20:45 hours, the survivors tumbled ashore, greeted by medics and warm blankets, each life saved by the relentless courage and uncanny warning call of one indomitable Parrot. By dawn's early light the next morning, the Lizard Point Coast Guard station buzzed with anticipation. The previous night's rescue of Sea Star's crew had already become local legend, and well-wishers, families of the rescued, fellow mariners, and even reporters gathered on the rain-slicked quay. Center stage was a small oak pedestal draped in navy canvas. Captain Marcus, still wrapped in a survival blanket, stepped forward beside Coast Guard Station Chief Lieutenant Emma Harding. In her hand, Marcus held a polished silver plaque, etched with the silhouette of Captain Jack in mid-squawk, wings slightly unfurled. Beneath the image, the inscription read, "In honor of Captain Jack, whose fearless squawk saved us from the storm, October 5th, 2025. Harding cleared her throat into the hush. Last night, amid gale-tossed seas and faltering engines, it was not radar or radio that guided our SAR teams, but the alarm calls of a scarlet macaw. She smiled at Jack, perched on a proper stand beside the podium. Feathers still bristled from the night's ordeal. Marcus unveiled the plaque with a swift tug, revealing it to applause and cheers that echoed off the quay's stone walls. Jack rewarded the crowd's appreciation with a triumphant caw, 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 his voice surprisingly strong after hours in the tempest. Following the plaque ceremony, Lieutenant Harding announced the new Parrot alarm protocol to be added to Coast Guard SAR guidelines. Aviary alerts. Any avian squawk or unusual bird calls received over station audio must be investigated as potential distress signals. Bearing and signal analysis. Use microphone arrays to triangulate bird calls, just as with emergency beacons. Integrated response. Deploy rescue craft immediately upon confirmation of avian alarm signals, regardless of other sensor data. Wildlife welfare. Coordinate with marine rescue wildlife officers to ensure safe handling and care of alerting animals. As workers mounted the bronze-tinted plaque to the station's cedar plank wall, families pressed forward to thank Jack and his human companions. Local schoolchildren presented the Parrot with bouquets of peppers, his favorite treat, and the Coast Guard band struck up a spirited sea shanty. Later, in the station's ready room, the crew pinned copies of the Parrot alarm protocol to the operations board. A framed photograph of Captain Jack in mid-squawk hung above the chart table, a lasting reminder that heroes come in all shapes and feathers. And out on the quay, as the morning tide reclaimed loosened moorings, Jack preened his glossy feathers, eyes bright with pride. In every cliffside caw and harbor squawk thereafter, mariners would hear the echo of his warning, proof that sometimes the smallest voice can carry the greatest weight in saving lives.